You're in my seat. Zane snapped the moment he stepped into the cramped cockpit, voice catching on the stale air as if it resisted letting another presence inside. He wasn't expecting company, let alone a slender, violet-skinned woman with glowing markings across her cheeks who stared back at him without moving. She lifted her chin and kept her eyes fixed on him, while her fingertips spread across the console. Her luminous eyes were more mesmerizing than any star cluster he'd ever navigated. The hum of the idle engines vibrated through the floor, making each second of her silence more palpable, until she finally answered with a voice like a low, throaty purr. "Then you should claim it," she said, tapping the console lightly. Her words were both a challenge and an invitation. Zane's heart raced, and for a moment, he forgot how to breathe. In the bitter gloom of this disused outpost on Kira 4, where he'd come to salvage precious materials for trade, he never dreamed he'd find someone else, let alone someone so alien, so unapologetically intriguing. He took one step closer, scanning her features. Small filaments branched from her temples, faintly pulsing with light. Each pulsation matched some internal rhythm that fascinated him. Her attire was rough, patched with different scraps of fabric and material he didn't recognize. Yet her posture was regal, a silent command that said she wouldn't budge unless she chose to. Zane breathed out, well aware his gear, leather jacket, utility belt, standard-issue cargo pants, looked unimpressive next to her exotic allure. He tried to steady his voice. "You must have the wrong vessel," he said, hoping to provoke some explanation for how she got in here. "This is my salvage. Also my seat. So, mind telling me why you're rummaging through the cockpit controls?" She pressed a button on the console, and an exterior sensor reading flickered on the overhead screen. "I was looking for a power source. I need to communicate with my clan." Zane frowned. Communication arrays here were mostly defunct, so she must have some knowledge of older systems to get them working again. The swirling patterns on her arms glimmered, mesmerizing him anew. "All right," he conceded. "But that doesn't give you the right to park yourself in my seat. Or rummage in my ship." And as he said it, he realized she might have skill sets he could use. "Look, you've got about 20 seconds to step away from the controls Before you what?" She didn't even blink. Her lips curved as if daring him to come closer. "Will you throw me out?" He stared at her, feeling the tang of frustration mingle with a pulse of attraction he couldn't control. He was never one to let strangers take advantage, but something about her presence unsettled every reflex he had. "I don't even know your name," he muttered. She uncrossed her legs. That's when he noticed how her thighs had faint, swirling lines glowing in tandem with her temples, and they contracted as she gracefully rose. Her eyes met his. "I am Avara," she said at last. "If this is truly your vessel, then I have trespassed. Allow me some courtesy, and I will leave." He clenched his jaw. "Not so fast. If you know anything about these outpost systems, I might have some use for your expertise. I don't want to get stranded here, and I'm sure you don't either. How about we work something out?" Avara's luminous gaze flicked to the battered co-pilot seat beside the console. "Perhaps we can." Something unspoken passed between them. An awareness of bodies, of breath, of the emptiness of this place, and the loneliness that seemed to press on them from every shadow. He caught a whiff of her scent, vaguely floral but with an edge of ozone, like the moment before lightning strikes. They were so close that if either of them moved forward, they'd collide. For a moment, Zane wondered if he wanted that. But sense came rushing back. He was here for a job, scanning for salvageable technology to sell on the black market. She was a complication, an alien presence with unknown motives. Yet the part of him that had grown numb after too many lonely nights among the stars found itself inexcusably drawn to her. He forced himself to look away from that subtle glow across her collarbone. "All right," he said, clearing his throat. "We can talk terms. But not in my seat." She let out a quiet hum of acknowledgement and turned away from the console. Instead of leaving the cockpit, though, she slid into his battered pilot's chair with a deliberate roll of her hips, a lazy, provocative motion that stoked the tension in his body. He swallowed. "That's not what I meant," he managed, stepping forward. Alvara slipped her hand along the arm of the chair, head tilting in curiosity as she observed him. Strange custom. You say you wish me not to leave. But you also want me out of this seat. I sense a contradiction. Her voice seemed to ripple like dark velvet, each word carefully measured. Zane's breathing turned heavy. He reached out to grip the chair's top, towering over her as she reclined. She didn't seem afraid. In fact, she seemed emboldened by his nearness. You don't understand human courtesy, he told her. Or maybe you do and just don't care. His gaze flicked downward and he caught a glimpse of her parted thighs, one slender hand resting on the curve just above her knee. You can't just make yourself at home and expect. Her other hand slid lightly across her hip, the swirl of luminous patterns dancing in the dim light. He had no idea if she was teasing him, or simply comfortable in her own skin. But his chest felt like it might explode from the adrenaline pounding there. I will not do anything you do not want, she said, a hint of a smile on her lips. But you seem conflicted. I'm not, he lied, feeling heat flush his face as he tore his gaze from her body and tried to focus on the console behind her. We'll talk terms. First, if I help you contact your clan or whatever you need, you help me fix the ship's jump drive. We're stuck on this outpost without it. Alvara studied him, her fingers grazing the side of the seat in a slow, absent-minded gesture. And second? He drew a breath. Second, get up from my chair. Her expression flickered with amusement. As you wish. With effortless grace, she rose, letting him slip into the pilot's seat. Just as he settled, she leaned forward, one hand on the backrest, her face inches from his. Her eyes glowed, a swirl of amethyst and electric blue. You may find me uncooperative at times, she murmured. But I promise, we will benefit each other. I don't arrive empty-handed. Zane fought the urge to close his eyes under the intensity of her presence. I guess we'll see, he said, turning back to the console. All right. Let me see if we can get the comm array up. Then we can figure out if we can even trust each other. This place isn't exactly known for friendly neighbors. His attempt to refocus on the blinking lights in front of him felt forced. Alvara's breath grazed his ear. He didn't realize how stiff his muscles were until she stepped back and gave him space. That's when he exhaled and forced himself to concentrate on rewiring the defunct controls. He felt her presence behind him, scanning the overhead compartments, rummaging for something he couldn't see. She might have been casing the ship for valuables. Even if she was, he didn't have many left. He lived mission to mission, fueling up on scraps and gathering anything worth selling. People called him a scavenger, but he preferred to think of himself as a survivor. The overhead lights flickered. With a few toggles, the comm array sparkled to life, albeit dimly. He typed in some manual commands, tried to ping any local channels. Static filled the cockpit, but no immediate sign of life. Nothing but dust, he muttered, and maybe a few cosmic echoes. This equipment is too old to catch a strong signal from orbit unless. She slid into the co-pilot's seat. The movement made him flick his gaze to her again. Her posture was straight, and her fingers drummed across the console in a curious pattern. The lines of luminescence tracing her arms pulsed brighter for a moment. Let me try, she said, and her hands moved with graceful purpose. Zane sat back. You're skilled with Terran frequencies? She gave a non-committal shrug. I have encountered humans before. We traded knowledge. He wondered what that meant but kept quiet as she navigated the system. Her slender fingers danced over the console, adjusting wave bands, scanning for subspace signals he'd never even considered. He marveled as data scrolled across the screen, unusual fractal patterns forming from her calibrations. Within minutes, a flicker of static blossomed into a coherent signal, a short-range ping that might connect to satellites if they were still operational. There, she murmured, almost to herself. We may need to boost the power, but there is a possibility. If the old relays on this outpost are functional, I can send a narrow beam to my clan's coordinates. Zane watched her, impressed despite himself. How do you know so much about these old systems? She paused, turning to look at him as if weighing how much to reveal. My clan, we scavenge as well. We adopt technology from various places. These older Terran models are robust, easy to adapt if you understand the basics of wave manipulation. My father taught me to harness signals. I was once my people's voice. He sensed a hint of sorrow there, something about the past that made her eyes lose some of their glow. But he didn't press. He had his own painful memories that he'd rather not share with a stranger. Especially one who'd cornered him in his own cockpit, rummaging through his systems. Yet that curiosity tugged at him. He wanted to know more of her story. An alarm beeped on the console, interrupting the moment. A fuel sensor readout indicated dangerously low reserves. Damn, he breathed. We'll have to do a run for more thruster fuel. The jump drive might be shot, too. No matter how fancy your scanning technique is, without fuel, we're stuck. Avara tapped the screen thoughtfully, then turned her luminescent gaze on him again. There might be reserves in this outpost. If we can find the right storage module, we can siphon what we need. Zane remembered the labyrinth of corridors and locked storerooms out there. He'd only explored half of them. The place was rife with old cargo crates and automated security drones that might still be active. Not a walk in the park, he said, shutting down the consoles to conserve power. But we're short on choices. A small smile curved across her lips, and she stood, her body language shifting from languid to alert, her gaze flicking to the narrow corridor leading out of the cockpit. Then let's go find it. The idea of stepping into the gloom with her at his side, facing unknown threats, made his pulse pound faster, but also stirred a flicker of excitement. He stuffed a portable scanner and his sidearm into his belt, slung a flickering flashlight across his shoulder. Avara just waited, her posture poised, as if she was accustomed to stepping into danger. He tilted his head toward the exit, watching as she brushed past him. The faint shimmer of her body lines in the darkness left an afterimage on his retinas, like a ghostly imprint he couldn't quite shake. The air in the corridor was stale and cold, the overhead lights flickering with a sickly yellow glow. He found himself trailing behind her just enough to keep the path ahead in sight, the close proximity making him hyper-aware of the subtle undulations of her form. She glanced back at him once with a mischievous glint in her eyes, but said nothing. They turned a corner, stepping over fallen crates and the rusted remnants of a security drone. The sound of dripping water resonated somewhere above, probably from a broken pipe. Shadows sprawled across the floor, looming like silent watchers. Zane took the lead then, scanning the readout on his portable device. Fuel reserves might be down in the basement levels. We'll need to find the right elevator or a stairwell that still has structural integrity. Avara pressed her palm against the door panel. Nothing happened. She pressed harder, her filaments brightening. These panels usually require a power surge. Let me see if I can bypass it. She placed her other hand on the panel's bottom edge, and Zane heard a fizzing spark. The door gave a whining groan and slid halfway open. She ducked inside with lithe agility, and he followed, contorting his broad shoulders through the opening. They emerged into what had once been an operations center, tall machines, servers, and thick cables running across the floors. Most looked ruined, but a single console in the corner still flickered. Avara walked toward it, her footsteps echoing in the desolate space. Zane kept watch, scanning for any sign of lurking threats. That's when a cluster of overhead lights snapped on with a grating hum, revealing the entire width of the chamber. A shrill alarm made him wince, and red lights began rotating on the walls. Security lockdown, he hissed, bracing himself. Automatic turrets or drones were common in these old outposts, relics that fired on intruders. He glanced around frantically. We need to shut it down, now. Avara didn't flinch, just reached the active console, her fingers moving in a blur. Distract it, she called, and he heard a clank of metal to his left. A battered security drone swiveled, focusing a blinking sensor array on them. He rolled behind a tall server stack, heart pounding as beams of sizzling energy shot overhead. Gonna need more than a distraction in a second, he muttered under his breath, pulling out his sidearm. The drone hovered forward on thrusters, rotating its barrels. He aimed, squeezed off a shot. The bullet sparked uselessly off the machine's reinforced plating. "Great!" he barked. "Makeshift armor. We might need to short-circuit its sensor node." Alvara's voice was steady, calm as she typed frantically. "I'm trying to open a direct override. Cover me a moment longer." Her glowing filaments intensified, as though her concentration channeled more than just mental acuity. Zane dared a quick glimpse from behind the server. The drone advanced, scanning. He fired again, hitting a joint near the thruster. Sparks flew, and the drone wobbled. It unleashed a volley of bright pulses that sheared metal from the server. Zane ducked, adrenaline surging. "Hurry!" he shouted. Another volley might rip him apart. She typed something on the console, slammed her palm onto a blinking surface, and he heard a low hum, like a wave that made the entire chamber vibrate. The drone sputtered, dropped a foot, and clattered to the ground in a heap of metal, its lights fading to black. He peered around the server cautiously. "You did it?" Alvara nodded, letting out a breath. "Disabled the entire local security net. We should have a clear path to the basement levels now." She turned to him with relief. But then her gaze flicked to the ragged tear in his jacket sleeve, which was smoldering from a graze. "You're injured." He glanced down. His arm stung, a shallow burn that seeped blood, but not life-threatening. "Just a scratch," he lied, though the pain throbbed deep. She approached him, raising a glowing hand to his arm. Without a word, she slid the torn fabric aside. He tensed when her cool fingers touched the scorched skin. Warmth radiated from her palm, followed by a soothing tingle that made him shiver. She looked up at him with those luminous eyes, close enough that he could feel her breath on his cheek. "My clan's healing technique," she explained softly. "We channel certain energies through these filaments. It promotes tissue repair." He tried to stay stoic, but the gentle waves of comfort eased his tension, luring him into a moment of vulnerability. "Thanks," he said softly, focusing on her glowing markings, the way they pulsed with each wave of healing. The burn's sting subsided, replaced by a dull ache. She let her hand linger a fraction too long, fingertips pressing lightly on his forearm. The closeness drove his heart into a steady gallop, and a flicker of something unspoken passed between them. She parted her lips as if to say something else, but then simply withdrew her hand. Together, they turned back to the console. She typed another command, and the overhead alarm subsided. The route to the basement level came up on a flickering screen. "There," she said, tracing a path. "We have to pass through 2 sealed corridors and a freight elevator." Her voice sounded subdued, as though that intimate healing moment had tapped into something deeper in her. He inclined his head. "Let's get going before more defenses wake up. That override might be temporary." They left the operations center, stepping back into the corridor. A faint chemical smell lingered in the air, possibly from the meltdown in the turret's power supply. Each step felt heavier to Zane, not from exhaustion, but from the odd sense that with each minute, he grew more entangled with this alien woman. She was a puzzle, a stranger who evoked his desire and his suspicions in equal measure. The corridor sloped downward, and soon they were navigating debris-littered walkways. Some of the overhead lights flickered, some were completely out, leaving them in patches of darkness. The building's foundation groaned occasionally. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped a steady rhythm. Alvara pressed a hand to the next door's panel, this one marked "Freight Elevator Access." "It's locked," she said with a soft curse. Her filaments glowed again as she tried to channel a power surge. The door hissed, but refused to open. "We might have to force this one." Zane set his jaw. "Step back." He drew a small device from his belt, a shaped charge intended for blowing through bulkheads or sealed compartments. He placed it at the door's seam, turned the dial to minimal yield, and motioned for her to stand behind the corner. A beep counted down, and he ducked. The low thump reverberated through the corridor, causing dust to shower from the ceiling. The door buckled inward with a groan. Alvara coughed softly, batting the dust aside. Her luminous eyes narrowed as she peered through the torn metal. "Clever," she said, stepping forward. Together, they pulled at the warped edges until there was enough space to slip through. Inside, they found a tall, open elevator shaft, the platform stuck several floors below. A heavy chain dangled, swaying gently. The acrid smell of metal dust was overpowering. The control panel must be down on the elevator itself, Zane observed. If we can climb down, we might rewire it, bring it up to this level. Avara stared into the dark emptiness. I can handle climbing, she said confidently, stepping toward the chain. Her gaze slid to him, an unspoken challenge. You! He snorted softly. I've scrambled up and down enough wreckage in my day, he replied, though the length of the climb looked daunting. Still, with no other option, he tested the chain's strength. It held, rattling loudly. His flashlight beam revealed a ladder on the wall as well, partially rusted. Probably safer to take the chain with Avara than rely on disintegrating rungs. They descended slowly, the echo of metal clinking enveloping them. The gloom below swallowed them up, each foot of progress bringing them deeper into the outpost's bowels. Zane was hyper-aware of Avara's presence above him, her boots occasionally brushing his shoulders if she slipped or swung. At one point, she paused, letting out a shaky breath. He glanced up. You okay? He asked, concerned she might be losing her grip. She gave a faint nod. Just, our kind sees poorly in pitch black. The glow of my filaments helps, but I still feel uneasy. Her voice betrayed a vulnerability he hadn't yet heard. He pointed the flashlight upward, illuminating her face, the faint sheen of sweat on her forehead. We're almost there. He lied, not actually certain how far the platform was. She offered a small, grateful smile, and they continued. At last, he felt his foot collide with a metal surface. Platform, he murmured, relief evident in his voice. Avara dropped beside him, legs trembling slightly from the climb. The elevator platform was battered, with cables and wires strewn about. Zane shone the flashlight on a side panel, kneeling. Let me see if I can get this working. As he fiddled with the wires, Avara crouched next to him, her warmth pressed close against his side. He inhaled that electric, floral scent again, and it sent a shiver through him. She guided his hand toward a specific cluster of wires. Cross these, she murmured, her voice near his ear. Then patch that circuit to the main line. It should supply power from the outpost's backup generators, if they're still active. Their fingers brushed, an unintentional touch that burned more than any spark from the cables. He tried to ignore the heat that flared in his chest, focusing on connecting the wires. A small flare of light erupted, followed by the hum of dormant machinery waking to life. The elevator whirred. They exchanged a look, both surprised by the success. Zane pressed a large red button, and the platform lurched upward a few feet before stopping with a metallic jolt. Looks like we can only go down, he observed, the control panel's indicator blinking to show that the upper tracks were broken. Guess we ride it down to the basement. Avara nodded, stepping to the edge of the platform. Below was inky black, faintly illuminated by the flicker of the panel's readout. We came all this way for fuel, she said. No point turning back. Zane swallowed, hitting the button to descend. The platform rattled, letting out a low, scraping wail that set his teeth on edge. As they sank deeper, the air grew colder. After a minute, the elevator jerked to a halt at what seemed to be the bottom level. A corridor stretched out beyond the elevator, lined with thick pipes. The faint hum of electricity suggested partial power here, too. They stepped off, boots echoing. Zane kept his flashlight trained ahead, revealing a series of heavily reinforced doors. Maintenance bays, he read from the faded sign on one. Storage. Hangar access. He paused at the largest door, marked Fuel Reserves. This is it, he said, hooking a pry bar to the latch. Avara added her strength, and together they managed to push the door open. The stench of stale air assaulted them, but inside was a wide space filled with towering metal cylinders. Many were rusted or tipped over, but some might still be intact. Zane's flashlight beam traveled over the labels. We might hit the jackpot if these are the right chemical mixture for standard thruster fuel, he murmured with barely contained excitement. He pulled out a scanner, testing the first cylinder. Empty. Then another. Almost empty. On the third, the needle soared. Yes, he breathed, pounding a fist in triumph. Full tank. Enough to get us off this rock, maybe even to a trade station. Alvara watched him, leaning against one of the tanks. Her eyes shone with quiet satisfaction. Then our partnership has proved fruitful, she teased. He shot her a crooked smile, that sense of camaraderie warming him from within. Yeah, he replied, crossing to the tank's valve to see how they might transfer it to his ship's reserves. I'll need to rig a siphoning system. We'll have to cart this up in smaller containers, maybe. Could take hours. She stepped closer, letting her slender fingers brush over the cold metal. I can help. My clan also taught me how to handle hazardous transfers. He glanced at her hands, remembering how they had soothed his burn. You've got a knack for helping, don't you? Alvara's expression softened, but there was something guarded in her eyes. Sometimes, she said, I fail to help in ways that matter most. The subtext in her voice tugged at his curiosity, but he kept quiet. They worked side by side in companionable silence, rummaging for hoses, setting up an improvised pump to fill smaller canisters. The outpost's old systems groaned, but they found a manual override that allowed them to run the pumping station on minimal power. They filled canister after canister, each taking a load to the elevator, riding it back up to store them near the cockpit. It was tiring, repetitive work, but neither complained. In fact, the tension between them had shifted, replaced by a subtle synergy. Every time their eyes met, a flicker of heat passed through Zane's veins, a reminder of her otherworldly allure. During one of the returns to the basement, he caught her watching him. She didn't look away. You're not like other humans I've met, she remarked, voice echoing slightly in the corridor. He raised an eyebrow. How so? A playful glimmer animated her features. Less suspicious, more alive. Others were cold. Transactional. But you show curiosity, emotion. He rubbed the back of his neck, uncertain how to respond. I guess I got sick of living like a machine. Surviving day by day, caring about nothing except the next job. Sometimes it feels like if I stop to breathe, to care, I'll just break. Alvara's gaze softened in understanding. She placed a hand on his chest, gently, over the place where his heart thudded. Then maybe that's exactly what you need to do. Break, so you can heal differently. The sincerity in her eyes threatened to overwhelm him. He swallowed hard. Yeah, well, he said gruffly. I'll worry about that once we're safe off this rock. He moved to pass by her, but she held her ground, her luminous eyes searching his face. The swirling lines on her arms glowed faintly, as if responding to the closeness. A tension crackled between them like a static charge. He found himself leaning in, mesmerized by her parted lips. A clattering noise behind them shattered the moment. He spun, shining the flashlight. A battered cleaning droid sputtered around a corner, apparently activated by their restored partial power. They both let out a breath they didn't realize they were holding. Alvara exhaled a small laugh, stepping back. We should get the rest of the canisters, she said softly. Then we'll be done here. He nodded, chest still tight. Right. They finished the job with renewed haste, the near-intimate moment lingering unspoken in the air. By the time they transported the final canister up, exhaustion set in. They stored them in the cargo hold near the cockpit. Zane dropped to a crate, wiping sweat from his brow, while Alvara leaned against the wall, her own chest heaving slightly. Despite the exhaustion, their eyes still found each other. No, he said, catching his breath. We just need to fix the jump drive. She pushed off the wall, her posture returning to that confident, regal bearing. Let me see your engine room. When he gave her a surprised look, she raised a brow. Don't look so skeptical. If I can adapt Terran signals, I can handle a jump drive. Her lips curved in a way that sent a thrill through him. He shrugged, leading her down a cramped hallway to where the battered jump drive sat. Panels were removed, wiring exposed. He tried to fix it a dozen times, only for the coils to short out in his face. She circled it, filaments shimmering like they were tasting the air. "This design is older than I expected," she mused. He crossed his arms. "You can handle it, can't you?" She offered a small, self-assured smile. "Let me show you." With that, she knelt, rummaging through the exposed wires. As she worked, he knelt beside her, handing her tools whenever she asked, enthralled by how her fingers danced. The closeness grew palpable. More than once, she brushed against him, the contact sending lightning through his veins. They'd been at it for nearly an hour when she paused, looking up at him. "That part," she pointed to a converter coil near the top, "is cracked. I can sense the energy leaking. If we don't replace it, the drive will fail." He cursed under his breath. "I might have a spare. Or something close enough." He rummaged in a storage bin, finding a coil from another salvaged ship. "This might do, though it's not an exact match." Her eyes traced the coil. "With some modifications, it might. Do you trust me to do that?" He straightened, heartbeat pounding. "I guess I do. Not sure why, but I do." The admission left him feeling exposed. She accepted the coil, a hint of a smile playing at her lips, and got back to work. While she delicately shaped the coil's connectors, Zane found himself watching the way the pulsing lines on her arms reached her fingertips, glowing brighter when she concentrated. He found it strangely beautiful and wholly entrancing. The tension in the air felt thick, as if at any moment one of them might make a move either could take back. But neither spoke of it, devoting themselves to the mechanical puzzle before them instead. At last, she fitted the coil into place, and a low hum filled the compartment. Faint energy lines flickered across the drive's surface. "We should test it, but carefully," she said, stepping back with a deep breath. He powered up a minimal charge. The drive whirred, glowing faintly, then stabilized. A wave of relief washed over him. "That's more progress than I've made in months," he admitted. "I think you've done it." Alvara leaned against the bulkhead, exhaling, her filaments dimming. "I need rest," she said softly. "Energy work like that takes a toll." She bowed her head, and he noticed a tremor in her shoulders. Without thinking, he reached out and steadied her, hand on her arm. "Hey," he said gently. "There's a bunk in the next compartment. You can rest there." A rush of concern mingled with a fierce protectiveness he couldn't quite explain. She hesitated, eyes drifting to his face. "I do not want to be a burden," she murmured. "You're not," he replied, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "You've helped me more than I can say. Go on." His heart thumped, remembering how she'd sat in his chair, challenging him. Now she looked almost vulnerable. He guided her to the bunk, mindful of how her body seemed to lean into his touch, as if the synergy between them was stronger than any barrier they might erect. She slumped onto the thin mattress, exhaling. He hovered awkwardly, wanting to say something comforting. Her luminous eyes lifted to his, intense despite her fatigue. "Stay," she said, voice barely above a whisper. His pulse kicked. The request startled him, but part of him wanted nothing more than to remain by her side. He settled on the edge of the bunk, breathing in her ozone floral scent. She slid one hand to his chest again, a soft gesture that sent warmth coursing through him. He could see the question in her eyes, and it mirrored the one pounding in his chest. The desire that flared so quickly frightened him. He never connected with someone, let alone an alien, in such a raw, immediate way. But it was there, a live wire crackling between them. He didn't resist when she tugged him closer. The bunk creaked as he shifted, his gaze locked on her parted lips. She whispered something in her own language, soft, musical, full of longing. He swallowed, leaning in until their breaths mingled. Just before their lips touched, he forced himself to pause. "Are you sure?" he asked, voice trembling with the weight of the moment. Alvara's lips curved into a tender smile, and she closed the distance, pressing her mouth to his. That first kiss radiated heat that spread through his limbs, unraveling the tension in his body. He realized he'd been waiting for this moment since he first found her in his chair. Everything else, the salvage, the security drones, the battered outpost, seemed to fade. Her mouth was soft, tasting of something foreign and sweet. He deepened the kiss, a low rumble building in his throat. She responded with equal fervor, her lithe body shifting to accommodate his weight. His hand found the glowing lines on her arm, tracing them gently. She gasped, the filaments brightening under his touch. The sensation was like a current of warmth that responded to contact, as if her body recognized him. He could have lost himself in that connection, but a distant explosion-like sound rattled the hull, yanking them both back to reality. They broke apart, breath mingling in the dark, hearts pounding. "What was that?" he asked, still disoriented by the aftershock of her kiss. Avara's eyes flared with alarm. "Something hit the outpost, or an internal system overloaded." She tried to rise, though her body still trembled from exertion. "We must check." "Stay," he insisted, running a hand over her shoulder, torn between concern for her and the urge to investigate. But she shook her head. "We should both go," she declared, determination blazing in her gaze. "We can't risk it if more security measures have activated, or if we're under attack." His breath trembled with the remnants of desire, but he nodded, helping her up. Their momentary bliss vanished, replaced by the urgent need to ensure they weren't about to be crushed under collapsing structures. He grabbed his sidearm, she steadied herself, and they hurried back toward the cockpit. Smoke drifted through the corridors, and faint emergency lights flashed red. The air smelled of burnt circuits. When they reached the cockpit, Zane's console sparked, the readouts displaying half a dozen errors. "An external force triggered some meltdown in the station's core," he muttered, slamming a fist on a panel. "Maybe a meteor strike, or maybe we reactivated something we shouldn't have." Avara's fingers danced across the system's interface, ignoring the flickering sparks. "The station's meltdown sequence has begun. They built these outposts with fail-safes to contain damage, but it also means it will shut down, seal compartments, and flood them with coolant. We could be trapped if we don't act fast." He cursed. "We have enough fuel now to take off, but the meltdown might trap the landing bay doors shut. Or worst case, blow the station entirely. We have to try anyway." He reached for the flight control toggles, the engines sputtering to life with a low rumble. "Strap in," he ordered, motioning for her to sit in the co-pilot's chair. She complied, strapping the harness over her chest. He was acutely aware of how disheveled they both were from that near-intimate moment earlier, but survival came first. He powered up the thrusters. The old ship shuddered, dust shaking from overhead compartments. Warning sirens howled outside, but he forced the engines to spool higher. Come on, he hissed at the readouts. "Give me enough power to bust out of here." Avara pressed a switch. "Doors are still locked. I'm trying to override." She typed rapidly. Zane felt the ship strain, metal groaning under the buildup of force. If they didn't open soon, he'd have to blow them. Another panel crackled. The meltdown sequence was racing. Seconds felt like hours. Finally, the external camera feed showed the heavy bay doors sliding open, painfully slow. Without waiting for them to fully retract, Zane slammed the throttle. The ship lurched forward, scraping the half-open door with a wrenching squeal that made him wince. Sparks flew across the viewport, but they broke through the opening into the swirling, ash-filled sky. The outpost's roof collapsed behind them, a plume of debris and coolant vapor belching upward in a cloud of destruction. Zane maneuvered away as fast as the battered engines would allow, heart hammering in his chest. "Are we clear?" Avara asked breathlessly, scanning the readouts. Zane quickly stabilized the altitude. "We're in the atmosphere still, but climbing," he said, relief flooding him. "We'll need to breach orbit and see if the jump drive holds up." A shaky laugh escaped her lips, mixing with the tension of near catastrophe. "That was close," he exhaled, adrenaline coursing through him. "Too close." Only then did he allow himself to look at her. She met his gaze, and he saw the mixture of triumph and lingering desire in her eyes. The moment of connection in the bunk hung between them, a promise unfulfilled. But at least they were alive. As the ship climbed, the external pressure decreased. Zane engaged the main thrusters for orbital escape. The battered hull rattled, but the modifications Avara had made to the engines held. Layers of gray cloud parted as they broke through, revealing the inky expanse of space. Stars shimmered. The swirl of Kira 4's atmosphere glowed below. They'd done it. He set the ship on a stable orbit, letting out a low whistle. We've got enough fuel to get out of here, maybe jump to the next system. There's a trade station about a day's travel away, if the jump drive cooperates. Avara unfastened her harness, leaning back in the co-pilot chair. Should I attempt to contact my clan from here? He drummed his fingers on the console, thinking. We can try, but it might be better once we're in open space. Station orbit is still cluttered with interference. He paused, searching her face. You said your clan travels? Where are they now? She glanced out the viewport, her filaments dimming to a soft glow. Beyond the outer ring, near the starfields that border your Terran territory. I was separated from them during a conflict. They were forced to flee. I stayed behind to deal with unfinished business. Zane tried to read the flicker of pain in her expression. What kind of conflict? She hesitated, then pursed her lips. A faction of slavers has been targeting my people. We are prized for our healing abilities and luminous markings, which they find exotic. He felt a stab of anger at the mention of slavers. I was captured briefly, she said, but I managed to escape, crashing here and losing my means of communication. He recalled her adeptness at scanning signals, her fearless approach to danger. That's why you needed to contact your clan, he guessed, his tone gentler than he intended. They must be worried about you. She nodded, looking out the window again. I do not even know if they still wait. But I must try. Zane stared at her luminous profile, feeling a surge of protectiveness. We'll find them, he promised quietly. One way or another. She turned to him, and the gratitude in her eyes nearly took his breath away. A moment of charged silence ensued, the memory of her lips on his stirring the longing inside him. He wanted to close that distance between them, to see if the spark would be as intense the second time. But caution nagged at him. They'd barely escaped a meltdown. They were still strangers. Weren't they? Yet an undeniable bond was forming. The tension in the air was tangible, the cockpit crackling with it. Before he could speak, the console beeped. A fuel status popped up, indicating enough for a short jump. He sighed, forcing himself to focus. We can jump soon, he said, scanning the data. Should we? Avara nodded. Yes. I don't know if the slavers tracked my last location, but I'd rather not be near the place they left me. She paused. Unless you have other obligations. Zane glanced back at the swirling planet. My only obligation was salvage, he admitted wryly. And we got what we needed. Let's get out of here. He engaged the jump drive sequence, bracing for the moment of truth. The newly installed coil hummed, building an energy field. A faint whine filled the cockpit, the lights flickered, and the starfield outside distorted as the ship pushed through a tear in space. His stomach lurched with the shift, and the swirl of colors replaced the emptiness of normal space. We made it, Avara breathed, sounding almost awestruck. The jump corridor extended ahead of them like a river of shimmering darkness, taking them away from Kira 4. He set the coordinates for a relatively safe sector near a small trade station, feeling both relief and a new swirl of excitement. They were truly on their way, a fresh start behind them. He glanced over, expecting her to be as exhausted as he felt, but she was watching him closely, her luminous gaze brimming with unspoken emotion. Zane, she said, her voice low in the rhythmic hum of the jump corridor. Yeah? Avara unbuckled her harness, rising and taking a step toward him. He turned in the pilot's seat, heart pounding. The jump corridor was typically stable enough that they could move around. She rested a hand on the back of his chair, leaning in. Her proximity made the cabin's air feel electric. Thank you, she whispered, her breath warm on his face. For everything. The subdued cockpit lights highlighted the sleek lines of her face, the curve of her lips. He swallowed, feeling a surge of courage. I thank you, too? For saving my life. More than once, I guess. She reached up, fingers grazing his cheek. The contact sent a tremor through him. We saved each other. Her eyes flicked to his lips, and an undeniable tension coiled between them. He hesitated only a second before leaning in. The kiss was deeper this time, hunger-laced with relief that they'd made it out alive. She responded eagerly, sinking against him, her filaments lighting up in shifting patterns that danced across his peripheral vision. He realized they matched her arousal, brightening with each flicker of emotion. His hands found her waist, pulling her onto his lap, his mind spinning with the sheer impossibility that this was happening. Her lips parted for him, and a low moan escaped her throat, reverberating through his body. Time blurred. The ship's hum, the swirl of jump space beyond the viewport, all became a distant backdrop to the warmth of her body and the taste of her lips. Every lonely night he'd spent drifting from job to job seemed to fade away, replaced by this intimate moment with an alien woman who'd changed the course of his life in a single day. Eventually they broke apart, both breathing heavily. She rested her forehead against his. Her filaments glowed in a lazy, pulsing rhythm that matched the heavy thud of his heart. When this jump is complete, she whispered, voice husky, we'll decide where to go next. But for now, let me stay here with you. He couldn't speak, only nodded, pulling her in again for another heated kiss. Maybe it was madness, but he'd never wanted something so badly. This union of two drifters, both desperate for connection, felt like gravity pulling them into an inevitable orbit. The jump corridor was long enough that they eventually curled together in the pilot's seat, an awkward but comforting nest of limbs. She dozed lightly against him, the afterglow of their closeness slowly giving way to the question of what came next. He studied her features in the subdued light, noticing details he hadn't before, the faint swirl of luminescence at her temples, the tiny scar across her collarbone, her parted lips that still tasted of that sweet alien breath. Desire welled up again, but he tempered it, letting her rest. An alert chimed. Jump corridor exit in 2 minutes. He gently roused her, and she stirred, stretching in his lap, her filaments flickering awake. They shared a soft, knowing look before she slid off him, returning to the co-pilot's seat. I'm ready, she said, voice still laced with drowsiness and contentment. The ship emerged from the swirling jump corridor into normal space. A distant sun glimmered, and a small trade station came into view on the sensors, a rotating ring with docking arms extended. Zane exhaled, tension knotting in his stomach. The station was a haven for smugglers, traders, and wanderers like him. No official law, just a patchwork of deals. It could be a chance to sell salvage, get supplies, or just lay low. But with Alvara aboard, he had new priorities. He pulled up a star map. We can dock here, sell some of our salvage, refuel, maybe get better equipment to contact your clan. Alvara nodded, studying the station warily. And if the slavers operate around this sector, we must be cautious. He grimaced. Yeah. We'll keep a low profile, get in and out. But as they approached the station's perimeter, the comm crackled. Unidentified vessel, state your business. An automated message standard for private facilities. Zane responded with a false transponder ID. He'd used it before for smuggling runs. The station cleared them to dock, though it charged a hefty landing fee that made him wince. They navigated toward a docking berth on the station's outer ring, the ship rattling as it settled into the clamp. The hum of the engines wound down. Zane powered off the thrusters, feeling a ripple of nerves. Something about stepping back into a public place with Alvara by his side made him uneasy. She was obviously alien, and not in the typical sense of a known allied species. Her luminous patterns alone would draw stares. And stares could lead to questions, which could lead to trouble. He turned to her. We might need to hide your markings, he said quietly. At least while we're in the open. The station's full of unsavory types who might recognize you for what you are. Her filaments flared defensively. For what I am? He lifted a placating hand. I mean no offense. You're unique. That can be dangerous in a place like this. Slavers, opportunists, you name it. Her expression softened a fraction, and she nodded. I understand. I can cloak them, to some extent. Dull the glow. He nodded with relief. Just until we're safely back aboard. He hesitated, then reached out, taking her hand. We'll keep each other safe, okay? A smile ghosted her lips. Okay. Before they lowered the ramp, she took a deep breath, closing her eyes. The filaments pulsed one last time, then dimmed, leaving only faint lines across her skin, barely visible unless one looked closely. She adjusted her clothing, covering what she could. They stepped out together into the station's chaotic corridors. The smell of industrial air recyclers hit them first, mingling with sweat, spices, and engine grease. Voices overlapped in 1,000 languages. Neon signs flickered overhead, advertising everything from black market weapons to questionable dining establishments. Zane led the way, scanning the crowd for threats. Alvaro walked close behind, her posture guarded. He guided her to a parts vendor he knew. The man was a grizzled cyborg with an augmented eye that whirred as it sized them up. Zane, he greeted, voice dripping with suspicion. Long time. Got some salvage from Kira 4, Zane said, placing a small bag of circuit boards on the counter. What'll you give me? The cyborg rummaged through them, occasionally glancing at Avara. Zane's shoulders tensed. At last, the vendor grunted. I'll give you 800 credits for this. That's generous. Zane scowled. It was less than he wanted, but he didn't argue. He needed the money fast. They wrapped up the deal. Alvara remained silent, shifting uncomfortably every time the vendor's mechanical gaze flicked to her. Once the credits were transferred, they moved on, seeking a small corner kiosk that sold subspace communication modules. Zane browsed, feeling her tension. He gently placed a hand on her lower back, reassuring her. She relaxed a fraction. They found a suitable calm amplifier that could boost signals across star systems. Alvara lit up at the sight of it, quickly testing the device with a practiced hand. Satisfied, she nodded to Zane. This will work. He paid for the amplifier with most of the credits they'd just earned, ignoring the pang of anxiety that came from draining his funds. A sense of purpose burned in him. Helping her reunite with her clan felt important, more than any petty salvage run. They made their way back toward the docking bay, weaving through throngs of station dwellers. Just as they neared the corridor leading to their berth, they heard a commotion. A loud voice barked something unintelligible. Zane's instincts flared. He turned to see a group of armed figures pushing their way through the crowd, scanning faces. Their attire carried a patch, the insignia of a known slaver syndicate, ragged black stripes over a silver crest. His blood ran cold. He felt Avara tense beside him, her hand drifting to where a weapon might be concealed. Stay calm, he whispered. One of the slavers spotted them. A twisted grin spread across his face. He signaled to his comrades, who fanned out, blocking the corridor. You too, he snarled, voice amplified through a chestplate speaker. You match a description we're interested in. Wrong guys, Zane muttered, edging sideways. But the slavers weren't listening. They drew weapons, sending station-goers into a frenzy of screams and scattering footsteps. Avara's eyes darted, searching for an escape route. The lead slaver advanced, brandishing a pulse rifle. We've heard rumor of a glowing female wandering about, one who escaped our net. Hand her over quietly, and we'll let you live. Zane's pulse hammered. He placed himself in front of Avara, instinct screaming to protect her. Sorry to disappoint, he drawled. But you've got the wrong lady. He unholstered his sidearm under his jacket, hoping they wouldn't see. The corridor behind them offered no immediate cover. They were cornered. Alvara's filaments threatened to flare in anger, but she controlled it, keeping them dim. Zane, she whispered, we can't let them take me. You must go if I. Shut up, he hissed, refusing to abandon her. The slavers closed in. Zane pulled his sidearm, fired off a quick shot. The beam scorched across the floor, forcing the lead slaver to dive aside. Chaos erupted. Bystanders screamed, diving for cover. One slaver fired back, the bolt smashing into a metal column near Zane's head. He ducked, dragging Avara behind a supply crate. "We're pinned," he growled, heart racing. He peeked out, firing a couple more shots, pushing them back. But the corridor was too open, too exposed. The slavers advanced methodically, forcing them to retreat. Avara clenched her teeth. "Let me help." She focused on a small control panel behind the slavers, her filaments flickering. She reached out with some kind of remote interface technique. The panel sparked, and a sudden shutter door slammed down, splitting the slavers' group in half. 2 were locked on the other side, cursing. The other 3 pressed forward. Zane seized the opening, launching a flurry of shots. 1 slaver went down, howling. Another ducked behind a support beam. The 3rd fired at Avara, who narrowly dodged. She let out a hiss of pain as a glancing shot seared her thigh. "Stop or she dies!" the lead slaver bellowed, eyes wild. He took aim at Avara's chest, stepping out from cover, evidently confident that Zane wouldn't risk the shot. Zane's heart hammered. He lowered his gun slightly, not wanting to provoke the fatal shot. The lead slaver sneered. "She's coming with us. That's a valuable piece of property you're trying to keep for yourself, friend." Avara's eyes flashed with fury. "I am no one's property," she growled. Her luminous lines flared violently, the color surging. She must have been summoning every ounce of her strength. A wave of bright energy pulsed through the corridor, momentarily disorienting the slaver. Zane saw his chance and fired. The shot struck the man's weapon, sending it clattering. The slaver roared, lunging at them with a retractable blade. Zane tossed aside his sidearm, grappling with the man. They crashed into the crate, fists flying. He took a punch to the ribs, wincing, but forced the slaver's blade arm to the side. Meanwhile, Avara was pinned behind the crate, fending off the second slaver. She let out a strangled cry as the man seized her arm. She responded by driving a knee into his torso. Zane caught glimpses of her filaments brightening again, surging with raw power. With a final surge of adrenaline, Zane twisted the first slaver's wrist, sending the blade flying. He smashed his forehead into the man's helmet. The slaver staggered, and Zane tackled him to the floor, slamming him with an elbow until he stopped moving. Gasping, he spun to see Avara had disarmed her opponent, holding his own blade to his throat. The man cowered, arms raised. "Halt!" a new voice shouted. Station security, heavily armed, emerged from the corridor behind them. They wore battered uniforms, but the sight of official weaponry made the remaining slavers freeze. The slaver pinned under Avara's blade spat curses but lowered his gaze. Another alarm rang out, and more station guards rushed forward, guns drawn. "Drop your weapons, all of you!" barked the lead guard. Avara reluctantly let the blade clatter to the floor. Zane raised his hands, stepping back from the unconscious slaver. The guards quickly surrounded them, corralling the 2 that were trapped behind the shutter. Cuffs were snapped on the slavers. One guard recognized the black striped insignia and grimaced. "Slaver scum!" he muttered, hauling them away. A tall, imposing figure in a captain's uniform approached Zane and Avara. "We don't like slaver syndicates here," she said coldly. "But I need to know who you are and what happened." Zane steadied his breath. "Just travelers, got cornered by these bastards." "They shot first?" asked the bystanders. Some of the station locals stepped forward, nodding in confirmation. The captain eyed Avara suspiciously, her gaze lingering on the faint glow of Avara's markings. "All right," she said finally. "You 2 can go, but don't cause any more trouble. This station doesn't tolerate brawls outside designated zones." Zane gritted his teeth, not pointing out that they were ambushed. "Understood." Security left with the slavers in tow. Once they were gone, the corridor slowly returned to its usual bustle. People parted around them, giving wide berths. Zane turned to Avara, who held her wounded thigh. Blood seeped between her fingers. "Let's get you back to the ship," he murmured, gently helping her walk. Her eyes were half-lidded in pain, though she tried to hide it. They limped down the final stretch to their berth, ignoring the curious stares. Once aboard, the doors sealed behind them with a hiss, and Avara nearly collapsed from relief. He guided her to the bunk, carefully peeling back the fabric over her thigh. The burn was ugly, but not as severe as he feared. Her filaments pulsed faintly, as if her body was attempting to self-heal. "Let me see if I can help," he said, rummaging for a med kit. She winced as he applied a salve to the wound, but soon the tension in her muscles eased. She exhaled shakily. "They found me," she whispered. "If they reach this station, they might be patrolling others too. My clan is in danger." Zane secured a bandage, gently pressing it into place. He looked up, meeting her anxious gaze. "We'll fix that amplifier, contact them, and figure out a plan. We don't have to stay in this sector. We can jump again, keep them off our trail." She rested a trembling hand on his cheek. "Why are you doing this for me?" she asked, voice raw. "I'm just—" He placed a finger to her lips. "You're not just anything," he said softly. "You saved my life, gave me a chance to earn a future that's more than salvage and self-loathing. Maybe I'm tired of drifting alone." He swallowed the lump in his throat. "Besides, I can't watch them take you. I won't." Tears shone in her eyes, and she leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. A quiet moment of understanding passed between them, transcending words. He let his eyes close, inhaling her scent. The station's stale atmosphere filters hummed around them, but all he felt was the warmth of her presence. She sniffled, smiling weakly. "Let's fix the amplifier, then. I want to try reaching my clan as soon as possible." He helped her stand, supporting her weight. She insisted on limping to the cockpit, determined to keep moving. Once there, she sank into the co-pilot chair with a wince, powering up the new comm module they'd purchased. Zane hovered at her side, watching her slender fingers dance over the console, adjusting frequencies. After several attempts, a faint static crackled over the speakers. Her eyes lit up with hope. She transmitted a series of pulses in some alien pattern. Silence. Then more static. She tried again. "Clan Avarice," she murmured under her breath. "This is Avara. Please, if any of you can hear me, respond." Zane's chest clenched at the raw desperation in her voice. More static. Then an almost imperceptible beep. He frowned. She sat up straighter, adjusting the comm's gain. Another beep, then a garbled voice, barely comprehensible. Her eyes widened with excitement. "They're out there," she breathed. She responded with the same coded pulses, clarifying her location. Finally, the voice on the other end formed a recognizable pattern. "Avara, where are you? We've hidden near the Eclean belt. Hurry!" The transmission was faint, full of interference, but it was enough. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She covered her mouth, sobbing softly in relief. Zane placed a hand on her shoulder, heart twisting at the sight. "We can head there," he said, pulling up the star map. "It's about 2 jumps away from this station." She nodded, blinking through tears. "Thank you," she whispered. I never thought I'd hear their voices again." He squeezed her shoulder gently. "You're not alone." They began preparations at once, topping off the ship's fuel, adjusting the jump coordinates. He sold off a few more bits of salvage for emergency funds, ignoring the pang of giving up potential profits. Each step felt purposeful, as if he were rewriting the script of his life. And it no longer revolved around the aimless pursuit of credits. Within a few hours, they had the ship restocked and ready. The bandage on Avara's thigh remained, though she insisted she could move without too much pain. Just before undocking, they shared a quiet moment in the cargo hold, finalizing some checks on the newly loaded supplies. Zane turned to her. "I know this might be naive, but you think your clan will accept a human on board? Even if it's just to say hello?" He forced a casual tone, but his chest was tight with apprehension. Avara studied him with those luminous eyes. "They are protective, especially after the attacks. But if I explain who you are, what we've been through, they will see you as an ally." Relief washed through him. He realized he wanted that acceptance, yearn to belong somewhere, even if briefly. Then let's go find them, he said softly, heart pounding at the thought of stepping into her world. They strapped in, and with a final nod from Avara, Zane guided the ship away from the station. The docking clamps released. He engaged the thrusters, slipping into open space. As soon as they were clear, he fed the jump coordinates into the newly repaired drive. Avara double-checked them. "Coordinates locked," she affirmed, voice steady. "Brace for jump," he murmured, flipping the final switch. The drive word, space twisted, and once again they were pulled into the swirling corridor of faster-than-light travel. He glanced at her. She looked ahead, eyes shining with determination. This time, no meltdown or security system interrupted the jump. The corridors parted cleanly, dropping them into a system dotted with asteroids and swirling cosmic dust. A small orange star glowed in the distance. "We'll need to skirt the Eclean belt," Zane said, scanning for the coordinates her clan had relayed. "They're somewhere near its edge." She pointed to a cluster of asteroids. "There. My people hide among them, using the belt's interference to mask their energy signatures." He nodded, guiding the ship carefully. The belt loomed large on the view screen, rocks tumbling in the vacuum, illuminated by the faint glow of the distant star. It was perilous to navigate. He tightened his grip on the controls. A collision here would rip them apart. But Avara's presence steadied him. She offered quiet directions, pointing out safe paths. At last, they found a narrow corridor in the asteroid field, faint energy readings indicating a cloaked vessel. "There," she said, her voice quivering with emotion. "We should hail them." Zane opened a channel on the new amplifier. "Avara's clan, we are approaching your location. Stand by." He glanced at her, letting her handle the alien pulse transmissions. A moment later, a shimmering distortion parted among the asteroids. A large vessel, organic in design, revealed itself. Pulsing lights along its hull suggested advanced camouflage tech. A comm channel crackled to life. "Avara." A voice spoke, clearer now, filled with urgency. "Is that truly you?" She gripped the console, tears shining. "Yes. I have returned." Her voice broke. "I bring a companion, a human, who helped me." There was a pause. Then, "You are welcome. Both of you. Dock at these coordinates." A docking bay opened on the side of the organic ship. Zane piloted inside carefully, heart hammering with nerves. The bay lights glimmered in a bluish hue, reminiscent of Avara's luminous lines. Once they landed, the hull sealed behind them. A pressurization cycle hummed. They unbuckled. Avara closed her eyes, took a deep breath. "They won't harm you," she said gently. "Come, meet my people." He nodded, uneasy but determined. They lowered the ramp, stepping onto a deck that looked more like a living corridor than metal plating, smooth and almost glossy. Figures approached, each bearing variations of luminescent markings. Some wore elegant robes, others had patchwork attire like Avara's. A hush fell as they recognized her. Then, suddenly, they rushed forward, embraces and tears. Avara cried out, hugging them, speaking rapidly in her melodic language. Zane hung back, a lump forming in his throat at the raw display of reunion. An older woman with elaborate filaments stepped forward, scanning Zane with discerning eyes. "This is the human who aided you?" she asked Avara in halting Terran. Avara nodded vigorously, introducing him. Her voice overflowed with gratitude as she recounted how he saved her from slavers, how they escaped Kira 4's meltdown. Zane felt awkward under the intense stares, but also strangely proud. The older woman bowed her head to Zane. "We owe you a great debt. My name is Surani. I am the matriarch of this vessel. If not for you, Avara might have never found her way back." Zane cleared his throat, dropping his gaze humbly. "Avara saved me as much as I saved her," he replied softly. A hush of respect swept the crowd. Avara reached for his hand, squeezing it gently, her eyes shining with warmth. Surani smiled faintly, turning to address the others in their language. They parted, allowing Avara and Zane to pass deeper into the ship. He could sense the mixture of curiosity and relief in the clan's eyes. As they moved through the corridors, he noticed bioluminescent patterns on the walls, pulsing in time with the clan's presence. Avara explained quietly that the ship was partially organic, grown and fused with advanced technology. My father was among the last to know how to sing the living hull into existence, she said, her voice tinged with nostalgia. We keep it alive through our synergy with the filaments. A small group followed them, including Surani, who guided them into a chamber that looked like a cross between a throne room and a communal hall. Soft cushions lined the floor, and a mild scent of incense hung in the air. Avara's clan members gathered, forming a loose circle. Surani spoke. We must discuss what comes next. The slavers roam these sectors in search of our kind. They have destroyed our worlds, taken many. We are but a fraction, scattered. Our vessel is our refuge. She glanced at Avara. You told us you stayed behind to handle a mission. Did you succeed? Avara's expression shadowed. I attempted to sabotage one of their main strongholds. But my infiltration failed. I ended up captured, then escaped. Zane rescued me from Kira 4. Murmurs swept the room. Surani's face fell. We cannot hope to go on the offensive without more allies. We have no standing army. Even though our people have gifts, we are healers, not warriors. Zane cleared his throat, mustering courage. I don't have an army either, he admitted, but I know the underbelly of the galaxy. There are pockets of resistance, mercenaries who might stand against slavers if the price is right. He paused, glancing at Avara, who listened intently. Maybe we can rally some of them. I can help. If you want me to. Avara's eyes glowed with gratitude, but Surani sighed. We have little to offer in payment. Our technology is specialized, our resources scarce. Zane set his jaw. Not all mercenaries are in it for the highest bidder. Some hate slavers enough to do it for less. He shrugged. It's a long shot, but better than waiting for them to pick you off. Avara touched his arm. Thank you, she whispered, voice tight with emotion. He gave her a small nod, feeling that fierce protectiveness surge again. Maybe this was the meaning he'd been missing, fighting for something other than his own survival. Surani studied him with softened eyes. Your help is welcome. We will find some way to repay you. She signaled to the group, who dispersed, leaving only a few behind. For now, rest and recover from your journey. I can see the weariness on both of you. Then we will discuss a plan. Avara led Zane to a private chamber, a cozy alcove with soft, low lighting. Luminous patterns decorated the walls in gentle waves. She winced at her bandaged thigh, and he frowned. We should have one of your healers look at that. I only did a patch job. She shook her head. I can manage. Their powers are best saved for dire injuries. She sat on a cushion, exhaling. I never imagined bringing a human here, let alone under these circumstances. He knelt beside her, carefully easing off her bandage to see if the wound needed fresh salve. Are you regretting it? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Her eyes flashed. No. I only regret that my clan sees your presence as a symbol of war. I wanted them to know you for who you are, not just for your capacity to fight. He swallowed, gently applying a soothing balm from her clan's medical kit. I'm not just about fighting. It's just, slavers are scum. If we can stop them, we should, right? She placed a hand over his, halting his movements. Yes, she agreed, her gaze searching his face. And perhaps we will. But first, let's heal. Then, if you are willing, stay with me. A flush colored her cheeks. Stay in my world. His heart lurched. He turned his hand beneath hers, lacing their fingers together. I want to, he admitted, voice husky. If you'll have me. Emotion flickered in her luminescent eyes. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his, the contact both tender and thrilling. The swirl of her filaments against his skin reminded him of their earlier moments, the heat of her body in that bunk. Slowly, carefully, she guided him to lie beside her on the cushions. He complied, feeling his pulse race. She curled against him, her thigh brushing his. The living walls pulsed softly, matching the quickening beat of their hearts. He traced a glowing line on her arm, remembering how it responded to touch. Her breath caught. "Your hands," she whispered. "I feel them like currents. Everything in me stirs." He swallowed, leaning in to kiss along her jaw, wanting to be gentle but also unable to contain the surge of passion. The memory of her fighting for her life, of her tears when she heard her clan's voices, fueled a deep longing to claim this intimacy on a level he'd never before experienced. She turned, capturing his mouth with her own, and the kiss they shared burned with the intensity of repressed desire. Her hands slid over his chest, tugging at the fasteners of his jacket. He could feel the hum of her luminous patterns beneath his palms. Every movement, every brush of skin, coaxed a new wave of sensation. She gasped softly as his lips traveled down her neck, the glow intensifying. Her nails grazed his back. Though the clan's troubles weighed on them, in this moment, the world outside receded. They undressed each other in slow increments, breath mingling, bodies trembling. It was a dance of discovery, human flesh against alien luminescence. As her thighs parted around him, he heard her whispered pleas in a language he couldn't fully understand, but her body's urgency spoke volumes. Each touch, each press of lips, ignited new sparks of pleasure. Their moans intertwined, echoing softly in the chamber. She guided his hand to a swirling patch of light on her abdomen, her eyes fluttering shut as if that spot was particularly sensitive. He explored it gently, marveling at the way her filaments reacted to his touch, brightening, swirling in patterns that pulsed with her rising heartbeat. The heat in his lower abdomen coiled tighter, urging him on. When they finally joined, it was with a slow, aching inevitability. She arched against him, a soft cry escaping her lips, her body enveloping him in a velvety warmth that felt both alien and intimately familiar. The sensation was electrifying. Her luminous patterns flared across her skin, painting the room in flickers of violet and blue. Zane held her gaze, breath ragged, awestruck by the raw intimacy they shared. He could see wonder in her eyes too, and a depth of emotion that transcended any fleeting encounter. They moved in tandem, a rising crescendo that built with each thrust, each gasp. His mind lost track of time, focusing only on the pleasure that unfurled like a supernova in his chest. She clutched at him, nails digging into his shoulders, urging him deeper. He felt tears prick his eyes at the intensity of it, the sense of belonging that bloomed in his soul. The final rush overwhelmed them both, a shared climax that rattled through their bodies like a cosmic wave. She cried out softly, the glow of her filaments flaring to a near-blinding brilliance before gradually dimming, leaving them trembling in the aftermath. They remained tangled in each other, hearts pounding, sweat cooling on their skin. Her cheeks shimmered with tears, of joy, relief, or both. He pressed his lips to her temple, murmuring her name. Avara. She clung to him, her fingers weaving through his hair, either of them speaking for a long time. Words would have felt too small for the magnitude of what they'd just shared. Eventually, reality drifted back. The clan. The slavers. Plans for war. But in that quiet space, the ache of emptiness he once carried felt far away, replaced by a fragile, exhilarating hope. She traced a glowing line across his chest, breath still ragged. "Thank you," she whispered, "for letting me be alive again." He closed his eyes. "I should be thanking you," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. "I never knew I could feel like this." They lingered in that tender embrace. Outside, the ship thrummed softly, carrying the hush of a clan in hiding. Though they were safe for the moment, the danger loomed beyond. He knew their next step would be to prepare, to gather allies, to face the looming threat. But for now, wrapped in her warmth, he allowed himself to imagine a future where they might truly belong to each other. Footsteps outside the chamber door stirred them. Serani's voice called gently. "Avara? Are you well?" Avara sighed, pressing a soft kiss to Zane's lips. She rose, dressing quickly, her luminous lines still faintly glowing with aftershocks of passion. "Yes, matriarch," she answered. "We'll be out soon." Zane stood, hastily pulling on his clothes, cheeks flushing with the knowledge that the clan likely sensed what had transpired. Avara didn't seem embarrassed, though. She combed her fingers through her hair, letting the faint luminescence recede into a more subdued glow. He found himself unable to look away from her, marveling at how radiant she looked, even in the afterglow of their coupling. The door slid open, revealing Sarani and a handful of others. They bowed, acknowledging the intimacy that had clearly happened, but not speaking of it. Sarani's expression was solemn, though not unkind. "We have discussed the threat of the slavers," she said quietly. "Some of our scouts report their forces have regrouped, chasing rumors of your location." Avara exchanged a look with Zane. "We must not stay here long," she said. "They'll eventually find us among the asteroids." Sarani nodded. "We plan to move, but we also need a more permanent solution. We cannot run forever." Zane stepped forward. "I can try contacting mercenary groups, old contacts of mine who might be willing to stand against the slavers. But it's risky. We'd have to travel to places where these criminals do business, rally support from those who hate them enough to fight." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Avara's eyes shone with quiet resolve. "I'm prepared to do whatever it takes," she said firmly, "to end their pursuit." Sarani looked around at her clan, then nodded. "We will hide in the dark corners of space while you seek these allies. Use our vessel as a meeting point if you must. We can hold our own if discovered, but not indefinitely. Time is of the essence." Zane and Avara shared a determined look. He reached for her hand, lacing their fingers. "Then let's go," he said. "We'll start by jumping to the fringe worlds, gather whoever we can. We'll bring them back here, coordinate a plan." Avara squeezed his hand in agreement. "And if we succeed, maybe we free more than just my clan. We can break the slavers' hold on entire systems." Sarani's eyes glimmered with newfound hope. "We will trust you both. May your union strengthen our cause." She bowed, leading the others away, giving them space to prepare. The clan parted, leaving Avara and Zane with the sense that a larger destiny called them. They returned to Zane's ship, this time with supplies and a small retinue of Avara's clan prepared to assist if needed. Avara, taking one last look at her father's vessel, let out a soft sigh. "I never thought I'd leave them again so soon." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll come back. Together." She turned eyes bright. "Yes, together." Leaning in, she kissed him softly, a promise sealed in the hush of the docking bay. Then they ascended the ramp, the swirl of her filaments dancing in synergy with the hum of his racing heart. The ship detached from the clan's living vessel, navigating back through the asteroid belt under Avara's guidance. Once free, they locked in new coordinates, heading for the fringe worlds where Zane's old contacts lurked. The jump drive powered up with a throaty whir, sending them hurtling through the swirling corridor of hyperspace once more. In the cockpit's glow, Avara settled into the co-pilot seat, looking at Zane with a contented smile. "We have a long journey ahead," she noted, voice full of unspoken hopes and fears. He returned her smile, reaching over to place his hand on hers. "We'll face it," he said simply. "No matter what. Because—" He paused, swallowing the lump in his throat. It felt like everything he wanted to say was too big for words. She laced her fingers through his, completing the thought he couldn't finish. "Because we have each other now," she whispered. The swirl of the jump corridor danced across the cockpit windows, illuminating their joined hands. In that quiet moment, they were more than just a human scavenger and an alien exile. They were partners, bonded by shared danger and an intimacy that transcended species. The path ahead would be fraught with peril, but they would walk it side by side, forging a new destiny in the vast expanse of the stars.